So this project was from the introductory course, SPED 730 for the University of Kansas Master's Degree Program in Special Education with a focus on high incidence disabilities. So although I didn't get to choose this project, it's definitely one that I would have chosen. Each of the interview projects from our coursework was so engaging and meaningful and varied and fun. This assignment in particular, I think was designed so that I was able to show my emerging understanding of the various topics, the many topics that we covered in this class up until this point. Some of those were collaboration, teaching philosophy, communication strategies, verbal and nonverbal, and using evidence-based practices to meet the various needs of our students. And it worked. Overall, I was able to show through high-quality questions that I was getting the material and growing in terms of theory and in terms of building my own professional vocabulary and making connections to the field itself and my own classroom. One of the areas that I could have done a little bit more is in the field of communication, particularly visual and nonverbal communication. It's one of the things that I would have left more open-ended in the interview, and I think that would have helped to add even more strategies in that area to the paper. Some of the things that I've thought about are implications for all teachers. No matter how good we are, no matter how great we become, there's always going to be room to add more research-based strategies to our toolbox. One of the things that I would like to point out is that looking back almost 2 years now, this really reflects my infancy in understanding a lot of these concepts. And so I say that to share this. I think one of the purposes of this paper was to inspire us to communicate and to learn more about the strategies that we had just been introduced to. And it was really effective in that. Anytime that I've had the opportunity to sit down with another professional who I really respect and pick their brain about research-based strategies, I come away not only with that knowledge, but wanting to learn even more. And so that this project, this paper itself, the interview project, was incredibly beneficial in that way. I think there are some reasons why some teachers don't embrace research-based practices. Not all teachers went through a teacher preparation program. We have alternative certification programs in many states. Thinking back to what I knew about research-based practices, it seemed that they were coming down the pipes from that top-down legislative model, and we questioned whether they were really as effective as they promised. We knew that it was going to be a lot more work, and we weren't sure whether that work was going to pay off for our students. At times, teachers have seen evidence-based practices as an attack on their autonomy, and it's not very clear that the process we use now in saying a student could use some help in this particular area, and then we go and look for particular strategies that will help, is the same way that we select evidence-based practices to help us with those specific needs of those students. As you look through future artifacts or artifacts from future courses, I think it's going to be obvious that I've grown in terms of the depth and breadth of understanding, the number of research-based and evidence-based practices in my toolbox. The understanding of how to find them, how to analyze them, and the research that supports them, how to match up a research-based strategy or an evidence-based practice with a specific student need of a specific student, and collecting data that shows whether or not they're effective. If you look at the artifact itself, one of the ways that I've grown, if we just look at vocabulary acquisition, my knowledge of that was pretty basic, and it's come a long way since then. What Ms. Weber was really getting at was that we can shape the length of student responses and the quality of student responses by modeling for our students. And I could now make the connection to the components of reading themselves, from phonemic awareness all the way up to comprehension, and recommend research-based strategies in each of those areas. And so we were really just getting our feet wet, and I think this whole interview was for us to gain interest more than anything, and it really did that. I didn't have the grounding in theory or the vocabulary yet in many of these areas that we were beginning to study that would now allow me to interview someone much more deeply and ask better follow-up questions in regards to their responses. I would love to have asked my interviewee about the data that drives the lunchroom situation she described, in terms of really expanding the least restrictive environment in the lunchroom, creating, how does she know, how does she measure the ways that a student might be ready to move from sitting with the class to sitting among non-disabled peers in the lunchroom. And I know she does that. In general, this paper helped to set me up for success by giving me that thirst for knowledge, that desire to absorb as much as I could about these topics and other topics that I knew we didn't have time to cover in this course. It caused me to create some lifelong goals that have been tweaked throughout the program. Among those, a desire to keep a pulse on national trends in education and research-based, or research in general in education, and specifically as pertains to special education. If you look at the last sentence from that artifact, it's pretty embarrassing now. It says, for teachers in either category, this document serves as an uplifting tool, providing both general inspiration and specific strategies. It's clear that I thought I had grown throughout from this interview project. Though looking back now after almost 2 years, it's incredible to see how far I've come. So I think this is an appropriate first artifact to share with you, and I think that the growth since this artifact is going to be evident as you move through all of the rest of these. So thank you for watching.